capable of incinerating targets within seconds. They're one of the most psychologically terrifying weapons ever conceived. This is 5 things you don't know about flamethrowers.
We got him moving. We're going back to buttoned up.
Invented in Germany at the start of the 20th century, the modern portable flamethrower was patented by a Berlin engineer named Richard Fielder. During World War I, it was further developed by a German captain, Bernhard Rademann, who was also largely responsible for developing the tactical use and application of the weapon. In fact, Rademann would become commander of the German Army's first flamethrower unit, known as the Flamethrower. Ironic because prior to the outbreak of the war, he had been a well-respected firefighter in the Leipzig Fire Brigade. During World War II, the United States began using portable, individually operated flamethrowers in large numbers for the very first time. In particular, Marines fighting in the Pacific found the standard backpack flamethrower, which was the M2, to be an ideal weapon for neutralizing hardened enemy fighting positions. In October 1943, the Chemical Warfare Service modified the portable flamethrower to fit in the bow machine gun mount of U.S. tanks, creating the first standard tank flamethrower. These modified flamethrowers were shipped to the Pacific in April 1944 and subsequently installed in M3A1 Stuarts, which became known as Satan tanks. 24 of these Satan tanks were used by the Marines on Saipan in June 1944, and thereafter on Tinian and Peleliu with good success. This prompted the continued development of a dedicated flamethrower tank, the first of which were fielded during the Okinawa campaign in April 1945. Because of our primal, innate fear of fire, flamethrowers, perhaps more than any other weapon in modern military history, produce a unique psychological impact. During World War I, German forces would often use flamethrowers in teams of 6, instructing their operators to move across the battlefield ahead of their own troops, in part to clear the way for their advancing echelons, but mostly to maximize the terrifying effect it had on the opposing side. In fact, it's generally thought that the majority of casualties from flamethrowers were not from the actual flames themselves, but from enemy troops who panicked, broke cover, and exposed themselves to gunfire.
Roger, that second one was pretty fucking right. Roger, it's kind of fun, isn't it?
Yet another innovation in flamethrowing technology was prompted by the river battles of Vietnam. As U.S. forces began their first large-scale push into the Mekong Delta region, it was quickly realized that the ability to burn away Viet Cong bunkers and concealed fighting positions along the riverbanks would be an incredible asset. And so in 1967, the first attempt at a Zippo boat was tested by parking a flame-throwing armored personnel carrier in the well deck of a basic Navy armored troop carrier vessel. Although the APC couldn't fire directly forward due to the height of the ramp, this hybridization was enough to convince the engineers of the benefits. And so shortly after, the Navy began altering monitor gunboats to use the Army's M10-8 flamethrower. These Zippo boats had a crew of 7, could reach a top speed of approximately 8 knots, and were capable of carrying 1,350 gallons of compressed napalm, which could be fired for just over 3.5 minutes up to a distance of 300 meters. In 1978, the U.S. Department of Defense voluntarily decided to stop using the flamethrower and removed the weapon from its arsenal, stating that it was no longer effective in the modern combat environment. However, Despite no longer being used as a military weapon, it's interesting to note that no federal law exists banning U.S. citizens from owning a flamethrower. Some states, like California, have imposed their own regulations, but for the most part, anyone can purchase and own one today. Although many nations, like the United States, have ceased using flamethrowers, some militaries still include the weapon in their arsenal. Do you know which countries still use flamethrowers? If so, post your answer online or reach out to us through Twitter using hashtag 5ThingsYouDon'tKnow.